the comments by the Attorney General contribute to people, encourage people not to wear masks?
Sure. Quite frankly, they're sick. Think about it. Did you ever think, any of you, you'd hear Attorney General say that following the recommendations of the scientific community to save your and other people's lives is equivalent to slavery? People being put in chains. You lost your freedom because he didn't act. The freedom to go to that ball game, the freedom of your kid to go to school, the freedom to see your mom or dad in the hospital, the freedom just to walk around your neighborhood because of failure to act responsibly. Anderson, I've been doing this a long time. I never, ever thought I would see such a thoroughly, totally irresponsible administration. It's one of the reasons why, if you take a look, the Pew Foundation poll, guess what? Russia, Putin, China, Xi Jinping are trusted by more of the people in the world than the President of the United States of America. And one of the reasons they cite is COVID, the way he's handled COVID. This is not only causing us lives lost here, it's causing us to lose our influence in ways that are profound.
Right off the bat, I just have to say that on one side, you have Joe Biden advocating for common sense steps to reduce the spread of a deadly virus, and on the other side, you have the chief law enforcement officer of the United States likening those steps to slavery, to the shackling of a subset of the population, to the greatest human rights abuse ever committed in the history of the United States, in case you were wondering just how out of touch this administration is. And here's Bill Barr's comments that Joe Biden's referring to.
Putting a national lockdown, stay-at-home orders is like house arrest. It's other than slavery, which was a different kind of restraint, this is the greatest intrusion on civil liberties in American history.
The fact is that if Republicans are so worried about their freedoms like they keep screeching about, then their sole priority should be getting the virus under control. It's not the lockdown that's the issue here, it's the virus that's causing the lockdown. The lockdown is the solution. And in fact, if people in power like Donald Trump and Bill Barr simply endorsed the lockdown from the beginning instead of railing against it under the pretense of freedom and liberty, then the virus would have already been contained months ago. It was this administration's own inaction that prolonged the very lockdown measures that Bill Barr is currently complaining about here. So if Bill Barr feels enslaved, then he has himself and his boss to blame. The simple truth is that it didn't have to be this way. And while Donald Trump is pretending that he's done a perfect job, 10 out of 10, wouldn't change a thing, Joe Biden has still displayed the leadership that we needed even though he wasn't in office. In January, Biden was warning about a pandemic. In a January 27th op-ed in USA Today, Biden wrote, quote, "The possibility of a pandemic is a challenge Donald Trump is unqualified to handle as president. Trump's demonstrated failures of judgment and his repeated rejection of science make him the worst possible person to lead our country through a global health challenge. The outbreak of a new coronavirus, which has already infected more than 2,700 people and killed over 80 in China, will get worse before it gets better. Cases have been confirmed in a dozen countries, with at least 5 in the United States. There will likely be more." In March, Biden started calling for Trump to invoke the Defense Production Act to surge production of PPE. And at the same time, Trump was dragging his feet, complaining that if he invoked it, that we'd be nationalizing our businesses and that would make us no different than Venezuela. So instead, we had doctors and nurses showing up to shifts in garbage bags. But hey, at least we're not Venezuela. In April, Biden urged Trump to form a pandemic testing board, which he called a nationwide campaign to increase production of diagnostic and antibody tests, coordinate distribution, identify testing sites and people to staff them, and build laboratory capacity. Meanwhile, in April, Trump was busy promising everyone that the virus was going to miraculously disappear. On April 3rd, Trump said, quote, "It's going to go away, it is going away, I said it's going away, and it is going away." On April 7th, he said, quote, "It will go away." On April 28th, he said, quote, "I think what happens is it's going to go away. This is going to go away." Between Biden and Trump, one of these people was prepared, the other was feeding us lies and misinformation. And that's not to mention the fact that throughout this entire process, Biden's called on Trump to protect and pay the essential workers who risk their lives to keep our country running and direct OSHA to enforce workplace safety. He's called on Trump to reopen the ACA enrollment to ensure that more Americans could be covered. He called on Trump to drop his bid to dismantle the ACA in the courts to strip millions of Americans of their coverage in the middle of a pandemic. Trump didn't do any of that. And even now, more than 6 months into this outbreak, he still doesn't have a plan. Joe Biden does, and for the sake of our lives, he should be voted into office so that plan can take effect. While you're here, please subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I take a deeper dive into the week's biggest stories and interview major players in the world of politics, like Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, Nancy Pelosi, Cory Booker, Eric Swalwell, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.